Welcome back to this keynote session of the AI and Data Exchange. We'll now continue our conversation with Major General Anthony Giantempo, the Program Executive Officer for Cyber and Networks at the Air Force and Space Force, and Alexis Bonnell, the Chief Information Officer at the Air Force Research Lab. I'm Jason Miller. There's so much to dig out from that, what you all just went through. So let me maybe go backwards a little bit. Alexis, let me start with the ActBot. This is a tool that does what? Can you give me a little more details in terms of it? It helps me as the user accomplish what?
Yeah, so it actually takes the acquisition process and breaks it down and in essence provides elements of, where AI really makes sense along that process. So, and I think you have a specific example of how your team used it. But if you can imagine, number one, there might be market research, right? You really want to be able to go and
that was my example.
Yeah. Okay. So you tell the example.
No. So yeah, just market research right off the bat. ActBot enables us to get out to a very wide array of data on particular industries. We can be as broad or as niche as we're looking for. And that really helps us identify in a much faster format who is out there in that realm of technology that we then want to start inquiring with and to gathering more information on. Before that, it's a lot of databases that are disaggregated, people's personal knowledge. I met a person who met a person who met a person. And so just that very initial phase of the acquisition process, which is market research for a requirement that we have, I see that being accelerating to a much faster pace where we can go, I now have a good handle as a senior leader on what our industrial base has to offer towards this capability.
And I think especially once you start getting into a process, and let's say you have a lot of submissions, it's not going to surprise anyone out there that some of these submissions are a hefty page count, right? There is a lot of information, and we appreciate all the information that, partners kind of submit to us to help us find the right solution. But if you think about it, really the activity before was that individual having to go read quite a lot, having to try to start making, smaller kind of comparative elements. But what really we're seeing with AI, what that allows that acquisitions professional to do is to be, number one, much faster, but also much more rich with the way they look at those submissions. So, the first part without AI might be a little bit of, let me get the gist, see which of these things are hitting kind of what the contract, might have said, but you're actually missing a lot of the richness. So when you start bringing in AI, you can say things like, well, here are the requirements, like go ahead and categorize these 6 submissions, with showing me the weights, right, of who has really doubled down on what part of the requirement. Or you might go back and say, show me who is missing requirements and which requirements are they missing, right? And so one of the things we like to talk a lot about is that, people should curate with abandon, but propagate with care, and so to the general's point, being able to really take in this information and in the same period of time, or quite frankly, much faster, being able to really dig and have a relationship with that information, which before would have been just quite, straightforward and
a lengthy amount of time for a singular iteration.
Yeah.
Right. So typically we give industry 30 days to respond to a request for a proposal. And then we usually get those submissions at the close of business on the 30th day. And then we take anywhere from 30 to 60 days to do an evaluation of the proposal. And usually that involves determining their compliance, then determining the weighted factors against the request for proposal. And that will take the entire length of time with one iteration. What I see in the future is I will release an RFP on Friday afternoon, and I will have 20 fully vetted proposals the following Monday morning that submitted to us. I see my team where they would take 30 days to read through a set of, let's say, 10 proposals once. Well, with the help of AI, they'll get all of the basic information they need within the first hour after the receipt of the proposal, and then can start iterating back with those industry partners. Hey, we noticed that you were not compliant with this aspect of the RFP. Would you like to address that again? Now, this is where a lot of honesty and trust is going to come into play that I'm not sure we had before, just because we didn't have the time for it before. The industry partner will go, hey, thanks for pointing that out. Yes, we can address that. And therefore we allow them to, and we get a better quality proposal. Or they come back and go, yeah, we're not really capable of doing that. Okay, thank you for that clarification. We'll move on from there. So I just think that we can use the time however we want to choose to use the time. The iteration, using the same amount of time to get to the richness, or if all I'm talking about is I need a compliant proposal, I can get that done in 1/10 of the time that we currently allocate today.
The market research piece is something that I've seen at other agencies, Homeland Security Department, others, because it also allows you to say, well, who in the market, and the market can be big, it doesn't have to be the federal market, but who has done this work before, and allows you also, and to maybe Alexis's point, find those non-traditional contractors, find folks, oh, I've never really thought about bidding on a government contract, but this one is up my alley. I didn't know it existed. Is that the other piece of this? It's kind of, again, broadening the aperture like you expect it to, but do you have an example or something that comes to mind of a case where, hey, we found somebody who would never have bid on this, but because of this market research tool or how, whatever, we got them to submit a bid?
I think one of the things I'm really excited about with some of the commercial technologies that are, starting to be announced and come down our path in particular, is many of them are very good at not only being able to analyze, the information that you might have, but they're actually able to go out and do kind of agentic searches, right? Or things like that. And so I think, we're going to see a pretty narrow time of being able to say, well, here's what we've gotten, or to, your point in the generals, here's what is known. But when you start talking about, it's almost like having like foot soldiers, right? Or interns that you can send out to say, hey, go check that hill for this. And what we tend to find is that it's not only about finding different suppliers, but quite frankly, sometimes we are able to see in that market research that there are some capabilities or some functionalities or elements that we did not put in the requirements that we may actually want to make an amendment on because of our larger exposure to the art of the possible, right? And I think, acquisition is very much where the art of the practical meets the art of the possible. And I think that really comes down to insight, access to information, and really understanding what your options are. So we are absolutely seeing AI kind of help expand that universe of options. Sometimes that is kind of moving forward, in the procurement that it's tackling, but sometimes it's actually going back and saying, you know what, we're only 10 days in, maybe we want to add something, right? Or make an adjustment because we have information we just did not have before.
General Giantempo, I want to go back to the ATO example. Where are you at with that? Is that, Alexis mentioned, hey, if someone can help with the RMF piece, we'd love to hear that. Did you test this out and did not get the results you'd hoped for? Did you never get to the test point?
So I think right now there are some good nascent tools out there that we're excited by. But I think the nirvana, right, and the way that we're seeing, different tools around acquisitions or other things I mentioned, are not yet there. And so what that might mean is we're looking for things that potentially can connect, with APIs to systems like EMAS. We're looking for, things where we can kind of auto check, compliance based on its knowledge of a DevSecOps platform, for example, or we're looking at something that can ingest the STIGs and scans, right, and actually auto validate, some of the elements. And then also, as an example, recommend POAMs. Like, what are the types of things where we can find, kind of that security compromise with that program to say, we can lean in if you agree to do the following things. I think one of the elements that might sound, a bit unusual for an authorizing official to say, I actually think it's just so important that we have empathy for the people navigating these processes. And what I mean by that is oftentimes, believe it or not, they do not spend their days being cybersecurity experts, right? This is just one thing in addition to many other things they have to navigate. And so where I get excited about AI is it's not just, giving me what I need as the AO. It really, if it's done well, should make it easier for that person to not have to be a cybersecurity expert, but still be able to do everything that we mutually need, to assure security. And as an example, maybe if I gave you a poem, maybe that could suggest 3 different services, right, in that category that you don't have to go find anymore, right? It just connects you and you can say, turn this on, turn this off. So I think it's both kind of the processing and getting it to the AO side, but people often treat the ATO as if it's the finish line. And I have to remind them that it's the starting line. And so when we look at AI and the RMF, we really want to look at not only the beginning of the concept or project, but actually how we continue to see and are able to monitor security after it's issued an award.
It's not just a government interest or concern. That's an industry, as high an industry interest as well.
Yeah, and I think that there's going to be some really interesting questions around what that means for like interoperability, or the power of kind of APIs and different tools or environments. And I think the opportunity to be bringing in AI for some of those very toil, heavy tasks is also just a chance for us to, not rethink the process, but rethink how we might meet that, in new and different ways because of this technology.
We got just a few minutes left together. This has gone by very quickly, and I very much enjoyed our conversation. I'm going to ask each of you, what's a big priority for 2025 and beyond when it comes to AI data? Where are you heading next? Alexis, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, sure. I think this continues, to General Tempo's point, this continues to be first and foremost a human journey. And so I think we are excited about a few things. One, we're really excited about seeing more and more of these kind of role-based tools come into play so that people can really have their unique mission and their unique role come alive in AI. I think the second thing is continuing this type of AI education. So we're working together to put out some role-based training or other things to help people get more comfortable more quickly. And then I would say the third is when we talk about system modernization, we've gotten to work with Mr. Burse and PEO Bez and others. And I think there's going to be some really interesting areas where looking at AI for system modernization, how we might take some of those legacy systems, adapt them, really understanding and learning what is the AI good at. But we're seeing some really interesting aspects of our first learning that may mean that we can update and modernize a lot of systems at much greater speed and far less cost than we expected. So I think that's a stay tuned, but one that we're really digging into.
Yeah, for us, I am very much looking at, as I said, we were running parallel processes right now, doing things the way we know how to do them, and then doing them with the help of AI at different aspects. I see that ramping up to the point where we will be able to transfer over. That is my goal, that we'll be able to transfer over our process to utilizing this tool to really take advantage of the time savings that I believe that are there. We have a lot to do still on the conversation of data and data protection, both for industry and for the government. That's a really good conversation. We were talking about before about what are the good conversations to have about AI and what are the conversations that are distracting. I think data for our industry partners in relation to the government and what they're bidding on and what we're keeping protected, I think we're going to make some really good strides working with our Air Force CIO in that regard on our data fabric plan, our zero trust implementations. All of that will fold into the expansion and use of AI in our contracting processes.
All right, there's so much more to talk to. Unfortunately, we are out of time for this keynote session of the AI and Data Exchange. Let me thank my guest. Major General Anthony Giantempo is the Program Executive Officer for Cyber and Networks for the Air Force and Space Force. General Giantempo, thanks so much for taking the time.
My pleasure, Jason. I really enjoyed our time today.
And Alexis Bonnell, the Chief Information Officer at the Air Force Research Lab. Alexis, always a pleasure to catch up with you as well.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm Jason Miller, and you're watching Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more from the AI and Data Exchange.